Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are staring up at a moon that once mattered more to creatures without eyelids than it ever did to us blinking humans with smartwatches and indoor plumbing. We're going back far back into the ocean before time had teeth. You're not on land. You don't even know what land is. You're floating somewhere warm and the water glows. There's no shoreline, just flat nothingness above flat nothingness below. And yet, tonight feels different. A silver disk has risen for the first time in your memory or in anyone's. You don't know what it is, but you feel it. That's the important part. Something inside you, way deeper than your little calcium bones, twitches with a rhythm that didn't exist yesterday. It's not the sun. The sun burns. This is gentle and terrifying. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing who else is drifting out here in the dark with me. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You drift just beneath the surface. You don't have lungs. You don't even have a name, but you have nerves, a primitive brain, a silvery body like half a ribbon. You're part of a vast soup of squiggling proto-vertebrates that came into being in the Cambrian shallows, what a scientist might someday call Milokunmingia or Hypnotic. Don't worry, those names haven't been invented yet. Neither has pronunciation. Above you, a brightness spreads across the water. Not as fierce as the sun, but it makes your shadow longer. And longer shadows mean you're easier to find. A few of your neighbors begin to jerk rhythmically like someone whispered a signal through the current. Others freeze entirely. A small group migrates inch by inch toward a rocky reef shelf that's been quiet for generations. You don't know why. They don't know why. They just do it. This is the beginning of something scientists would later call lunar entrainment. Sounds fancy, right? Basically, it means your body gets hijacked by moonlight. You begin to live on a calendar you can't see, a calendar that doesn't ask permission. It starts with simple things: a twitch in your tail fin, a hunger at a strange hour, a desire to wriggle against another fish right when the moon hits peak height. Nothing dramatic yet. But multiply that across generations and suddenly an entire population is rising and falling with the light in the sky. Fish that once spawned at random now start doing synchronized sprints into the shallows. Timing becomes everything. You're not alone. Around you, countless translucent, bug-eyed, boneless, not-quite fish pulse and sink. It's a flash mob orchestrated by an ancient rock they've never touched. Authoritative fact time. Many modern fish still spawn in coordination with the moon, like the grunion of California who ride beach waves in moonlit mating swarms so precise they'd put a Swiss train schedule to shame. But back in your world, the moon isn't trusted yet. Some fish think it's a predator, others treat it like a god, and others, they just hide. They stay low in the silt, quivering beneath the sediment, hoping this isn't the start of another extinction. Odd fact. The moon's influence on Earth's tides used to be stronger, much stronger. Over billions of years, it's been slowing down like an old dancer forgetting the steps. Your early ocean feels the moon's pull more intensely than anything alive today. You shiver without knowing why. Some nights the moon vanishes behind cloud or eclipse and your instincts fumble. One night your whole reef is caught unaware. A shadow moves across the sand, something longer than you, smoother with teeth like needles. It didn't come for food, it came for the moonlight. And you were in the way. Historians still debate whether ancient fish had direct light sensitivity in their pineal organs, a kind of third eye buried in the skull, but whatever you've got, it's tuning in. Not just to light, but to pattern. The moonlight rises in cycles. Every 29 days or so, the sky becomes a silver drum, then dims again to black velvet. Over time, you learn when to rise, when to eat, when to run. It's not intelligence, it's deeper than that, it's ritual written in molecules. You aren't choosing this life, you're reacting to it. Some creatures flee, others stay and adapt, and a few figure out how to fake the signal. They begin to glow themselves, not out of artistry, but manipulation. They trick others into thinking the moon has risen, and when their prey dances, they strike. Someone in the comments is going to ask, wait, how did the moon even get here? Fair question. Most scientists agree it was born from a violent collision between early Earth and a Mars-sized object named Theia. Boom. Debris. Orbit. Moon. You don't know any of this. You just know that silver glow means everything. You begin to change your schedule. Nights aren't for sleeping anymore. Not that you ever truly slept the way humans do. You just sort of stopped moving until it felt safe again. But now you move when the moon moves. You breed when it shines. You scatter when it wanes. And when it's full, you do what everyone else does, you rise. Funny thing, your world has no clocks, no calendars, no astrology memes. And yet every creature down here can tell you exactly when the moon will crest the water, not with math, with muscle memory. It isn't about the light, it's about predictability. The first regular thing in a world of chaos. Awes, firestorms, and lava vents, sure. But the moon. The moon is punctual, a silvery pulse in the sky whispering across generations. Do it now. Do it now. You don't know the word ritual, but your bones are already writing one. You don't plan a journey. You don't pack a lunch or map a route. You just feel something tug behind your ribs like an echo that hasn't been spoken yet. You move because your kind always has. In a swarm, in a haze, in a trance, you don't control, you follow others. And they follow you. A few of them peel off. Some drift too low or too slow. They won't make it. You don't think about it. You just swim toward a rhythm you've never heard but somehow recognize. The moon is waxing, growing. That much you've learned. And something deep inside you, older than any idea you've ever had, says this is when you go. It begins as a shimmer. Scales flicker like sequins under starlight. Thousands of bodies converge, each one guided not by eyesight, but by a kind of magnetic lullaby sung by the moonlit tide. This is the origin of migration. Not because it's practical, not because of seasonal change, but because of moonlight. Silver tells you when to leave, when to love, and when to scatter your descendants into the waves. It isn't conscious, it's chemical. A little flood of hormones triggered by the light bouncing off your optic nerves, or maybe even your skin. Scientists would call it photoperiodic entrainment. You just call it movement. Tonight's one of those nights. You're not alone. No one ever is during a spawning tide. You bump into others your own species, sure, but also strangers, cousins you haven't seen in a million years. Fish that shouldn't even be here anymore. Some glow faintly. Others are transparent. And some carry odd scars, bite marks in strange places, fins, where there shouldn't be any jaws shaped like oyster shells. Evolution is still experimenting. You all follow the same pull. The same unspoken choreography toward a reef shelf bathed in moonlight. There are no walls here, no coral castles, just the illusion of safety. Authoritative fact. Modern-day fish like the Atlantic herring and bonefish synchronize their migrations with lunar cycles. They move in unison toward shallow grounds drawn by full moons and high tides. And we're not talking small groups. Some migrations involve millions of fish. You approach the shelf. Something about the height of the tide tells you it's almost time. You don't feel urgency, but inevitability. The way a sneeze feels just before it arrives. You swim faster not because you want to, but because every fin around you is doing it. The pressure builds. The water thickens with heat and chemicals and noise. Not literal noise, just the pressure of thousands of bodies moving with shared purpose. You could make a joke here about the first fishy traffic jam, but honestly, it's weirdly beautiful. Then it happens. The first wave breaks over the shelf. Dozens of fish arch their backs, bend like crescent moons, and let loose clouds of eggs and milt. A fog of future life fills the water. The moon is directly overhead now, casting your shadows down in long streaks across the reef like a prehistoric light show. And just like that, it is done. Not for everyone, of course. Some linger, some were early, some miss the window entirely and just look awkward now. But the cycle's complete. You don't even pause to reflect. Reflection isn't part of your anatomy. You turn already feeling that ancient pull releasing. It's like a string has been cut and now your body drifts back toward feeding or resting or hiding. Historians still debate whether early fish consciously sought breeding grounds or simply responded to environmental cues. What's clear is this lunar cycles created the first predictable mass movement of animals across space. Not for food, not for shelter, but for timing. Odd fact. Some fish don't just spawn during full moons, they hatch on them too. Coral reef fish larvae, for instance, are often born on moonless nights to avoid predators, while others hatch on full moons to maximize dispersal on strong tides. It's like a tide-based birthday party, except no one brings cake, or remembers your name, or knows what a cake is. You begin to drift away, not alone, but quieter now. Everyone's tired. The moon isn't. It's still watching. You remember something from last time, though remember is generous. It's more like your body anticipates the pattern. Next time the pull will come earlier, or later. The moon won't always play fair. Clouds will interfere, rocks will shift. And once the moon itself will vanish, casting the ocean into temporary confusion. But not tonight. Tonight the lunar beacon worked. You and your fellow time-traveling noodles obeyed the schedule. And for now, that means survival. You sink toward the deeper slope out of the moonlight, letting the cold rise up from the abyss like a blanket. Your body needs rest. Your kind doesn't sleep exactly, but you do go still. Very still. Just long enough to let the tide forget you exist. One of your neighbors bumps into you trailing a little too much milt. You both float apart, pretending that didn't just happen. It's always awkward when reproduction gets too personal. Another odd flicker. Something new moves nearby, a creature with a ridge of skin like a sail and teeth not made for plants. It wasn't here last time. You blink. If you could furrow your brow, you would. Everything's always changing. Still the moon calls. And as long as you can feel it, you'll move. You wonder, though, again. Wonder is a stretch. What happens if the moon disappears? Will the tide still come? Will the reef still bloom? Will your children still know when to rise? For now, you don't need to know. You just follow the light. And when you swim next to others, you sense a kind of ghost memory, not yours, but inherited. The first flicker of migration wasn't yours either. You're just the echo. You don't have eyelids, but if you did, you'd squint right now. Moonlight slices across the shallows in pale ribbons, carving you into shadow and light, whether you like it or not. It doesn't ask your opinion. It doesn't check in first. It just lands cool and heavy on your translucent back. You flatten yourself against the mud, trying not to shimmer. That's the thing about moonlight. It reveals. And revealing is dangerous. Some of your cousins still float casually under the glow. They've adapted maybe too much. Their bodies glitter like wet quartz. They don't hide, they perform. You wonder how long they'll last. Because lately there are watchers. Thin things with long jaws waiting just beyond the shelf, barely moving. Their patience is supernatural. They don't chase, they appear. And once they do, your glittery cousin is already a memory. You start to understand something not consciously again, but biologically. Timing isn't everything. Visibility is. Authoritative fact. Even in modern marine ecosystems, the full moon dramatically affects predator-prey interactions. Sharks, for example, often feed more during full moons due to increased light. Prey species tend to reduce activity. This pattern goes way back, probably long before sharks were sharks, back when predators were eyeless tubes with an attitude. Your solution, as it turns out, isn't to move faster. It's to become quieter, not in sound, in presence. You begin to darken. Cells in your outer layer compress pigment, making you match the silt. You settle deeper into it. Your fins spread like fingers barely pulsing. You're learning camouflage not by design but by reaction. Meanwhile, others try different strategies. One species twists its body into a perfect spiral every night, absorbing moonlight through a shimmering oil layer and reflecting it back as pure nothingness. Invisible under a spotlight. Cheeky little things. Another species decides to glow back. Bioluminescent bursts under the full moon, maybe as a mating display, maybe as a distraction. One night, a cluster of them lights up like underwater fireworks and draws in something large, sharp, and very, very fast. After that, fewer of them light up. Historians still debate whether this was the moment some fish began to understand pattern as danger, not just signal. That certain rituals, no matter how ancient, might need to be unlearned. And then, there are the rebels. A few fish stop surfacing entirely during moonlit nights. They linger near deep crevices defying the lunar call. No migration, no mass spawning, just hiding. These quiet ones survive more often, and when they spawn late in darkness and stillness, their genes survive too. This is the beginning of choice. Not in the human sense, but evolutionary. Life is testing variables, now showy versus stealthy, early versus late blind faith versus skepticism. Odd fact. There are modern marine worms that spawn exactly one night a month, based solely on the moon's brightness. They use simple photoreceptive proteins to count days. Miss that window, and they just hold the eggs in awkward silence. Talk about pressure. You slither through silt, feeling the pull of instincts you're starting to question. Do you rise with the others tonight or stay buried? The full moon's out. You can feel it in your bones, even if you don't have any bones yet. You decide to move sideways, not up, not out, just laterally. This seems like nothing, but it's revolutionary. Sideways is the first real rebellion. You're choosing a third option. It doesn't save you, not immediately, but you find something. A crevice filled with algae that shimmers opposite the moonlight, absorbing the glow rather than reflecting it. You hide there quietly while your more luminous peers do their dance. From your crevice, you watch them. Silver flashes, tail whips, egg clouds. Then, shadows. Predators descend. Not just from the depths, but from the sides. Fast, precise, coordinated. You stay hidden. It isn't intelligence, but it's close. Later, as the moon dips and the tide recedes, the survivors trickle back, less than before. You don't count, you can't, but you feel it. Fewer flickers, less noise. You emerge slowly and release your spawn alone. No celebration, no shimmer, just stealth. And still it works. You're not the only one learning this. Across the ocean, other fish are sinking not just with the moon, but with when to ignore it. Evolution loves a good counterpoint. Some lineages begin to split. One branch stays loyal to the full moon ritual. The other shifts to new patterns, new cycles, even new triggers like temperature or salinity. This is the moment fish stop being one unified story. You are becoming a secret keeper of the tide. Not a priest of the moon, but a skeptic. You still feel the pull, but you're learning to interpret it, to delay it, to whisper maybe later instead of blindly obeying. That whisper might be the first rebellion in animal history. Or maybe it's just the start of caution. Either way, it's a difference that matter. You drift past the bodies of others who weren't so cautious, glimmering trails of scales shredded by moonlit hunters. The reef is littered with lessons. You hear nothing, but the water around you hums. Not sound, not voice, just pressure. The kind you feel in your jaw when something large is coming. You sink low again, pressing yourself against the cool slope where moonlight doesn't reach. You've begun to associate light with loss. But still, you don't hate the moon. It's beautiful, terrifying, unrelenting. Like all great teachers, You don't blink because you can't. But if you could, this is when you would. The moon is full again. A perfect circle hanging in the sky like a watching eye that doesn't sleep. And tonight, that eye is brighter than you remember. It stretches your shadow longer across the reef, sharpens every fin, every scale, every shimmer of your passing body. You want to love it, but something in your nerves keeps saying not tonight. Because moonlight doesn't just pull, it exposes. It makes you obvious. It turns your silver belly into a beacon and your tail into a dinner bell. And right now, everything that can eat you is awake. Above the reef, slick torpedo-shaped creatures glide silently. They're faster than you, meaner than you, and full of surprises, like the one with a hinged jaw that snaps sideways, or the one with translucent skin and an unsettling number of teeth. You're still naming these predators mostly by the sounds you make when you first see them. You try to keep to the edge where the moonlight scatters, where the shadows melt you into the rocks. Your skin, once shiny and proud, begins to dull. You twist sideways to cut reflection. Your tail flattens. Your eye adjusts. This is the evolutionary arms race beginning moonlight versus survival. Illumination versus invisibility. Authoritative fact. In modern coral reefs, prey species like damselfish and cardinalfish reduce their foraging activity during full moons to avoid being spotted by night predators like barracudas and reef sharks. Moonlight doesn't just help you see predators, it helps predators see you. Evolution took that very personally. You pass another fish, its body glowing faintly in rhythmic pulses. It doesn't see you. It's too busy showing off. Too in love with the moon. You don't stick around to watch what happens. You duck under a ledge, curling your body inward. A slow-moving current brushes your side. You relax just for a moment. Then a shadow shifts, not fast, silent. A predator passes over you, long, jawed, confident. It doesn't search, it knows. It follows scent vibration and, worst of all, shadow. The moon shows it where you are by showing it where you're not. You freeze. Not because you think it'll help, but because freezing is all your kind has ever known. The predator drifts past, for now. Historians still debate whether early reef predators evolved to hunt by shadow first or by bioluminescence detection, but evidence suggests the full moon played a significant role in shaping both strategies. The more the moon shone, the more clever the hunters became. Odd fact. Some species of squid are so sensitive to moonlight that they actively ink themselves and vanish into the darkness if the brightness increases too suddenly. They've literally weaponized their panic. You keep moving, this time downward. It's colder there, darker, less moonlight, less everything really. You start to understand that safety might not mean hiding, it might mean descending. But not everyone agrees. A group of strange fish, thick-bodied, armored mouths on the underside, like vacuums, emerges from the crevices. They bask in the moonlight, seemingly immune to fear. They've got scales like shields and an attitude to match. They are the opposite of you. Moonlight is their armor. While you grow quieter, dimmer, more invisible, they evolve into tanks that dare predators to try them. Some of them even begin to reflect moonlight in dazzling patterns, confusing attackers with flashing scales that mimic multiple eyes or spinning movement. They don't run, they bluff. You admire them from a distance, but you know your path is different. You descend further where moonlight breaks apart like crumbs. It loses its certainty, no longer a spotlight, just a suggestion. And yet something stirs even here. In the dimness, smaller predators hunt by contrast. They don't need light to see. They just need enough to notice the difference between a still rock and a moving body. And they've gotten very good at noticing. You flatten yourself to the seafloor, pulse once, and pretend to be silt. It's your new hobby. A nearby fish has taken camouflage a step further. It's not just matching the seafloor, it is the seafloor. Its skin has shifted to sprout little fronds, fake barnacles, even what looks like a bit of coral fuzz. If you didn't see it move earlier, you'd swear it was part of the landscape. You consider copying it, not today, but maybe later. It seems like the sort of thing that gets passed down. Above you, hear the splash of a leaping predator. Something fast enough to leave the water and return before the moon finishes a blink. The upper waters are chaos. Screams without mouths. Struggles without survivors. And yet, the moon keeps shining. Patient, silent, unaffected. You wonder if the moon has favorites. If it picks which species to bless and which to expose. Then again, the moon isn't cruel, just consistent. And that somehow makes it worse. Because it will keep rising. And you will keep changing. Some of your descendants will evolve full-body chromatophore cells that flicker between colors like a mood ring in a horror movie. Others will grow so flat they vanish when viewed from above. Some will give up entirely and descend into pitch-black waters never to return. You tonight survive by hiding, but you also learn by hiding. You learn to listen for silence, to feel for current, to test the edge of light before crossing it. The moon gives you a rulebook, but predators give you a red pen. You don't hate the moon, not really. You hate what it reveals. Still, when the tide pulls back and the moon starts to dip behind the far side of the planet, you rise just a little and blink internally, a gesture you never quite developed. You made it through another moon. And next time you'll be smarter. The moon disappears, not behind a cloud. Not because the tide is wrong or the planet has tilted a few degrees. No, this is something else. You feel it before you see it. The way the current hesitates, the way the anemone stops swaying mid-rhythm, the way your own body twitches confused as though a beat has dropped from a song you didn't know you were following. And then it happens. The moon, so constant, so smugly dependable, goes dark. Not dim, not vague, gone. One moment, silver glow tracing the reef in dancing ribbons. The next, a black coin sliding over a white one, blotting out the sky. A total lunar eclipse. Now, you wouldn't call it that. You don't call anything anything. But your body knows something isn't right. It's the equivalent of walking into your usual grocery store and realizing all the shelves have been rearranged and everyone's whispering backwards. The full moon was supposed to be your sign, your cue, your calendar page. Now your instincts fall silent. Across the reef, confusion brews. Spawning schedules falter. Swimmers circle aimlessly. Some release their gametes too early, others too late. And one species, a long-bodied night-breeding predator, arrives at the usual moonlit moment to find its prey still asleep. Chaos. Authoritative fact. Paleontological models suggest lunar eclipses, while rare, may have historically disrupted mass spawning events among moon-sensitive marine organisms. Though hard to prove directly, we've seen similar confusions during eclipses in modern fish and coral populations. There are even coral reefs that time mass spawning events down to the minute after a full moon. And if you mess with the moonlight, the entire event collapses. The reef becomes a broken ritual. Your group doesn't spawn. You don't even try. You just wait, unsure if the moon will come back. You don't know how to proceed without it. Others push forward anyway. A small tribe of silver-scaled fish release everything into the dark water, hoping for the best. They get none. Predators, just as confused, snap in every direction. Timing is off. Strikes miss. Mouths close on shadows. The violence is clumsy. No one wins. You hide deeper than usual, curling your body in tight against a stone hollow. Your muscles ache. Your signals are confused. Half of your cells are yelling, "Go," while the other half are murmuring, "Wait for the glow." Somewhere in the mix, a third voice whispers, "Change." That whisper doesn't come from instinct. It comes from mutation. In the wake of the eclipse, a new kind of fish emerges. It's not stronger. It's not smarter. But it adapts differently. Instead of waiting for moonlight to signal spawning, it begins to rely on temperature, or salinity, or the scent of a particular algae bloom. These internal cues aren't as romantic as moonlight, but they're reliable. This is the beginning of divergence. A split not just in behavior, but in biology. You continue to use moonlight. Your cousins no longer need it. Historians still debate whether lunar reliance was a dead end or a catalyst. Some evolutionary biologists argue that fish who broke free from lunar rhythms colonized more diverse habitats. Others say the moon-tuned species endured longer, better synchronized with global tides. Like most things in the fossil record, the argument is mostly quiet, yelling over bones. Odd fact. Some species of shrimp today will still only reproduce during lunar phases, and if you change the artificial light in their tanks, they'll stop reproducing altogether. Even in glass cages, they're moonstruck. On the reef, something new has also appeared. Not a fish, not a predator. Something in between. It's long, ribbed, smooth as wet stone, and it blinks not with eyes but with body. Every few seconds, its entire shape pulses with light, not constant light like bioluminescence. Flashes, like it's mimicking the missing moon. You watch from a distance as smaller fish gather around it, mesmerized. It doesn't attack them. Not yet. It just hovers, glowing in regular rhythmic pulses. 1, 2, 3. Then it's gone. You don't know what it was, but you'll remember it. That night, something in your body changes. It's small. A protein shift. A synapse pause. But it matters. Next cycle. When the moon rises again, real. This time you wait. You don't move immediately. You wait to see if it will stay. You doubt, if only for a moment. That hesitation will be inherited. From now on, your kind won't rush to rise with the first moonbeam. They'll linger. They'll confirm. They'll test. Doubt is an adaptation. You finally ascend to the reef, late but not too late. Enough others have spawned already. You still have a chance. You dart forward quick and low and release your offering. A few seconds later, something brushes past you fast. Too fast, you dive. Another predator. But you were ready this time. You don't feel victorious. You feel cautious. And that too will be passed on. The moon completes its course and slips behind the world again. No eclipse this time. Just the usual departure. But you're watching now. You'll never trust it completely again. You go deeper, not because you want to. Wanting is still a little ambitious for your neural architecture. You go because the light is too much, the predator's too fast, and the rules you once followed no longer hold steady. You go because something inside you is tired of the script. The moon still shines above, casting its choreography over the surface. But you're not part of the dance anymore. You're part of the disappearance. You join others, a lineage of slow bodies and large eyes, of soft fins and even softer wills who stop returning to the reef. You drift, tail barely flicking as the waters cool and darken. And eventually, you find it, the layer where light surrenders. The twilight zone. You don't know it has a name. You just know it feels right, quiet, empty, a place where the moon can't reach. This is the great undoing of the moon's spell, for some at least. Authoritative fact. Modern deep-sea fish like the anglerfish and lanternfish live in perpetual darkness and have lost all reliance on lunar or diurnal cycles. Many use bioluminescence for communication, predation, or camouflage. Evolution didn't remove their relationship with light, it reassigned it. In your world, the first to abandon moonlight were tiny jittery things with wide jaws and twitchy nerves. They couldn't outswim predators. They couldn't outhide them either. So instead of escaping across space, they escaped across depth. At first, it's unsettling. Down here, the water presses differently. Sounds stretch. Movement slows. And there are no shadows because there is no light. Some of you panic and return to the surface. Most of those don't come back. The ones who stay, they adapt. Your skin begins to lose pigment. Color is meaningless in darkness. Your eyes grow larger or disappear entirely. Your bones soften. Your flesh becomes gelatinous. You stop wasting energy on shape and start investing in stealth. And then something strange happens. You glow, not all the time, not like the sunfish or the coral worms above. This is selective, delicate. You learn to control the light. It begins accidentally. A cluster of enzymes react to deep water pressure, producing faint bursts of blue, but those bursts attract plankton, and plankton attract prey. You realize light isn't just something to fear, it can be a weapon. Historians still debate whether bioluminescence first evolved for defense communication or hunting. Fossil records are scarce and soft-bodied creatures rarely leave calling cards. But molecular studies suggest light-producing enzymes may have emerged multiple times independently, meaning glowing wasn't a single invention. It was a favorite trick. Odd fact. There's a species of deep-sea jellyfish called Atala y that emits a bioluminescent burglar alarm when attacked, lighting up to attract a bigger predator to take care of its own threat. A kind of snitching strategy, if you will. You don't use light that way yet. You keep it close. Small flickers, gentle pulses, just enough to communicate. Because down here everything speaks and flashes. You meet another of your kind, though kind is generous. You both glow briefly in alternating bursts. A greeting. A warning. A mistake. You'll never know. But it changes something. You're not the only one who left the moon behind. Entire ecosystems begin to bloom in the deep. Glowing bait, flash signals, mating dances conducted in total darkness except for two synchronized pulses. It's intimate, it's terrifying, and it works. Above you, the moon forgets you. Or maybe you forget it. You no longer rise when it rises. You no longer spawn with its tides. You have your own tide now, driven by pressure, temperature, the echo of distant volcanic vents. Life has decoupled from the surface. Somewhere above, a reef collapses due to a mistimed migration. A moon-following species gets out of sync with its predator and vanishes in a generation. But you're fine. You were never part of that rhythm. You begin to sense that you're freer down here. But freedom comes with a cost. You don't remember the stars. You don't feel the warmth of sunlight anymore. Your world is a shadow wrapped in pressure. Still, it's yours. One night, if it can even be called that. You spot something massive, slower than anything you've ever seen, gliding through the black like a cathedral built out of jelly. Its body pulses gently, casting red light. Not blue like yours. Red, the rarest bioluminescent frequency. It moves without fear. It is the fear. You don't approach. But part of you watches, learns. There will always be predators, but now they follow a different star. You nest in the crevice of a volcanic slope near a crack that leaks warm chemicals from the Earth's belly. It smells awful, but it's home. You spawn quietly. No dance, no ritual, just solitude, warmth, and time. The moon still exists, but you no longer care. You light your own way. You don't remember splitting off, but you did. You and all your shiny-eyed, glow-bodied relatives who now live in the dark and whisper with flashes are no longer part of the surface world. You don't answer to the moon anymore, but others do. Up there in the glittering chaos of the reef and open shallows, a rift is forming. Not a geological one, a biological split. Your cousins, once synchronized in their moon-led migrations, begin to splinter into factions. Some still treat the full moon like gospel. When it rises, they rise. They spawn. They shimmer. They celebrate. It's a ritual, sure, but it's also a habit, and habits are sticky. Others start to prefer the darkness. The new moon. The one night when the sky disappears is safer. Calmer. The predators can't see. The water feels thicker somehow. These fish spawn in shadow, in silence, and they live longer. This is how it starts. A lunar divergence. Authoritative fact. In modern marine biology, many fish and coral species show opposing lunar behaviors. For instance, some groupers spawn on full moons while others only reproduce on new moons. Even closely related species often follow different lunar calendars, and scientists are still trying to figure out why. You float near the dividing line. You're not deep enough to glow, not shallow enough to shine. You're a moon moderate, a centrist with fins. Sometimes you spawn on full moons. sometimes on new ones. You're still deciding who you are. But the reef doesn't wait for decisions. It begins to split not physically, but socially. Territories form not based on food or predators, but timing. The full moon fish become aggressive toward the new moon types. Not in words, they don't have those, but in nips, nudges, interrupted courtship dances, and territory disputes. Your spawning rhythm smells off one imagines them saying, and slowly, the moon becomes more than a clock, it becomes a flag. Your tribe starts leaving the shelf earlier in the cycle. You time your migrations with the waxing crescent the moment just before the world brightens. You think of it as a compromise, enough light to find a mate, not enough to be seen by jaws. You're not alone. Others adopt the crescent rhythm too, a growing sub-faction that seeks balance. You are the lunar centrists, a movement without manifestos. Historians still debate whether this kind of behavioral divergence contributed directly to speciation among early fish. Did moon preference shape morphology? Did calendar battles make cousins incompatible? Fossil evidence is, as always, politely silent, but the idea holds weight. Odd fact. In some ancient Polynesian fishing cultures, full moons were seen as unlucky for catching certain reef fish, while others were only catchable during full moons. It turns out the fish agreed. One night you venture too close to a full moon tribe. The light is bright, your body reflects just enough to give you away. A swift shape rushes from behind a rock. You twist, dodge, and flee, but not before you feel the nip on your side. Territory enforced. Back in your own waters, the new moon fish are forming schools. They move like shadows, tight groups, slow, deliberate movements. They remind you of the deep-sea glowfish, but they have no light, only darkness perfected. They don't trust the moon anymore. They call it a trap. Again, not in words, but in the way they shudder when its light begins to rise. So now the sea holds three nations: the moon lovers, the shadow dwellers, and the in-betweeners. You're all fish. You're all shaped by the same tides. But your loyalty to a light in the sky has become a kind of culture. You wonder for a flicker of a thought whether one side will outlive the others. Then a predator swoops through, mouth agape, and you stop wondering. Survival isn't philosophical. You dart into a crevice, safe for now. Later you hear it, a low thrum in the current. Not sound exactly pressure. A message carried by the moon-pulled tide. Somewhere far from here, a coral bloom has exploded. The full moon tribe triggered it. A blinding pulse of life. Millions of gametes released at once. The scent reaches your cave. You shiver. It smells like success. It also smells like death. Because wherever the moon calls the loudest, the predators are already circling. You stay where you are. That night you spawn alone. Not because your instincts told you to, but because they hesitated, and you liked the silence that followed. A few of your offspring won't survive, but a few will. And they will remember not in thoughts but in flickers that the moon isn't law. It's suggestion. And sometimes suggestion leads to war. You've always felt the pull. Even now when the moon doesn't quite reach you, when you live under overhangs, tucked beneath ledges, or hovering just low enough to dodge a predator's glance, you still feel something. A thrum. A rhythm. A pressure that isn't current but isn't quite not current either. You've begun to understand something without realizing it. The moon doesn't just speak through light. It hums. And some of your ancestors are learning to listen. Not with ears. No one has ears yet. But with something almost better: bones. Tiny bones forming in fluid sacs. Or dense plates vibrating just enough to register the pull of a tide. Some of you are developing sensitivity not just to sound but to vibration. Enter the early mollusks. The oddballs. The ones who don't swim so much as sense. A shelled creature flattened, like a stubborn pancake, clings to the reef wall. It has no eyes, at least not the kind we'd brag about, but its entire body acts like a satellite dish, collecting microshifts in current, chemical traces in the water, and most importantly, rhythmic pulses in the tide. It doesn't care what the moon looks like. It cares what the moon does. Authoritative fact. Many modern marine organisms, including mollusks and bony fish, possess organs like the otolith or statocyst structures that can detect movement, vibration, and gravity. These primitive systems likely evolved in response to the repetitive mechanical pull of the tides long before true hearing existed. You hover near one now, a shelled mollusk locked onto its rock like it's afraid to let go. Its siphon pulses gently, timing its water intake to a rhythm only it hears. When the tide shifts, it shifts with it. It's a master of momentum powered by patience. Meanwhile, you're still stuck trying to decide whether to spawn on moonrise or moonset. This mollusk, it doesn't spawn at all. Not unless the tidal resonance hits exactly right. If the hum is off even by a fraction, it just doesn't. It waits, sometimes for days, sometimes for cycles, and when it does release, it's synced with thousands of others. The entire reef glows in microscopic rhythm. You watch jealous. You try to mimic it. You can't exactly, but something in your body feels the vibration. It's not noise, it's guidance. And now you begin to tune yourself differently. You start swimming less by sight and more by feel. You notice when the current shifts a few seconds before it does. You angle your tail slightly and find you glide more efficiently. You become aligned. It's not conscious, but it's real. Historians still debate whether early fish had true vibration-detecting systems or simply responded to water movement through lateral lines, sensitive cells that run along the body and register changes in pressure. Either way, the moon's pull wasn't just seen, it was felt. Odd fact. In the 1960s, scientists discovered that some fish respond to lunar tidal shifts even in complete darkness and even when removed from actual ocean tides. Their bodies had internalized the moon's schedule, like holding a drum beat long after the drummer left the room. Tonight, you move early. Before the light even touches the reef, you begin to rise. You can't see the moon, but you know it's coming. The others join you. Not many, just a few. The vibration-sensitive crowd. The ones who've stopped relying on light entirely. You're not coordinated by glow, you're coordinated by hum. It starts softly, a shifting of posture, a realignment, and then movement. You curve over the reef, sinking with the swell, not fighting the current but folding into it. You don't release anything yet. You're still waiting. Then you feel it. The moment. A pulse not of water but of pressure. A shift in gravity, tiny but profound. A tectonic breath. And without anyone telling you, because no one could you let go. Eggs milt. A fine haze of the future released into the rhythm of the reef. You do not sparkle. You do not shine. But the moon is there. Not above, but in the water. In the way it moved. You drift back down. From a distance, another group rises late. The full moon loyalists. They shimmer and dance bright against the reef. They still worship the silver glow, and that's fine. They're not wrong, just behind. Between you and them, the mollusks pulse together again. Their spawning is timed not by moonrise or sight, but by a millennia-old hum that runs through shell and water like a song no one composed. You envy their precision. You notice, too, that your younger kin new hatchlings that have begun to grow denser skulls with small internal chambers seem even more tuned to the tides than you are. They turn together before the tide shifts. Their movement is preemptive, quiet, harmonized. It's possible you've given them more than fins. You've given them a sense of when a predator swerves near but misses all of you entirely. You were already gone before it arrived. Not because you saw it, because you felt the shadow of its intent. Your school swims on not brightly, not blindly, but in sync. The moon doesn't need to shine to lead you. It hums, and you hum back. You're not supposed to find them, but you do. A rock slide, a strange undercurrent, a slow drift across what should have been empty sand, and suddenly, there they are fossilized into the reef wall like a forgotten message etched in silence. Two fish, side by side, their bones preserved in siltstone, delicate ribbon-like tails curled toward each other. And here's the part that stops your pulse. They're facing opposite directions. Not just opposite in angle, opposite in time. One fossil points moonward, caught in the position of an upward rise, jaws slightly open as if beginning to respond to light. The other, its twin in size, shape, and species, curls downward, tail tucked in a retreat, head angled toward the seafloor. You drift just above them, sensing a story. You can't read. You can't theorize. But your body tenses. This feels deliberate. These aren't just fossils. They're a memory, the ocean buried on purpose. Authoritative fact. Paleontologists have uncovered prehistoric fish fossils preserved in near-identical pairs, often aligned in symmetrical mirrored poses. While some dismiss these patterns as coincidental, others argue they represent behavior frozen mid-action, especially in mass die-off events linked to volcanic, tidal, or lunar disruptions. Something happened here. Not just death, but choreography interrupted. You move closer. The silt trembles beneath your fins. A nearby race darts away, startled by your shadow. You ignore it. You're studying. You imagine the moment. Two fish, same size, same species, same reef. But different choices. The moon rises. One moves up toward it as they always have. The other hesitates, pauses. Perhaps it was one of the skeptics, a cautious new moon follower, or a vibration-sensitive type who heard something wrong in the tide. They split. One commits, one delays, and then something massive descends. Not for one of them, for both. Historians still debate whether lunar cycle divergence ever led to simultaneous spawning confusion, where split timing in closely related species caused ecological disasters. Too many eggs, too few partners, mistimed predator avoidance. Evolution, after all, can be a bureaucratic mess. You loop around the fossil pair. They're not buried deep, just lightly entombed in a slope that hadn't been disturbed in 1,000 tides. You didn't expect to feel seen by the dead. Odd fact. In some deep caves in modern oceans, biologists have found ancient fish skeletons preserved perfectly next to each other, without decay, as if something buried them carefully. No predators, no scavengers, just pause. You drift back. Others are noticing now. A few fish join you, circling the stone imprint like a shrine. Some stay, some leave. No one speaks. Of course, no one can. But something's being learned here, absorbed through currents, through inherited fear. You move on, but slowly, reflectively. Your next migration starts early, not with the moon, but with a ripple barely perceptible. A shift in pressure you feel in your spine. You turn with it, others behind you, and avoid a rockfall that arrives seconds later. A lucky guess, or something else. You're becoming sensitive. Not just to the moon or its hum or the tides, but to memory. Some part of you, inherited and quiet, remembers those mirrored fossils. You won't be one of them. Later, another pair attempts the same pattern, two fish, same species, opposite timing. You watch from behind a fan coral as one rises, trusting the moon, and the other sinks, trusting the absence. Only one returns. The survivor looks around, wide-eyed, twitching. Not scared, confused. You swim beside it for a while. No words, just shared silence. The reef is full of twins now, not by birth but by rhythm. Some align to moonrise, some to moonset. Some have begun spiraling their migrations, circling the reef in lunar spirals, rising and falling in arcs that never repeat, like trying to be both fish at once. You try it once, swimming the spiral. A long, slow arc toward the surface, then curling back toward the depths. It feels right, not logical, not efficient, but whole. The spiral becomes a kind of compromise between direction and delay, a ritual that gives you options. You're not alone. Other spiral swimmers emerge, subtle, graceful, evasive. They're hard to predict, harder to catch. Predators struggle. They like patterns. This is not a pattern. This is evolution in motion, And it works. Next time you pass the fossil wall, there are 3 others with you. You don't stop, but you all glance as you pass, just long enough to remember. Not all twins are born together. Some are made by time. Some are lost to it. The moon is full again. You'd think that would be predictable by now, but it never feels the same. This time it's too bright. The silver washes out the reef, makes everything look like bone. The coral glows faintly, almost embarrassed to be noticed, and the sea itself seems to hum with anticipation. You're already uneasy. And then it happens. The reef blooms. Not with flowers, you haven't invented those yet, but with life. Coral polyps, tiny mouths, stacked into colonies, burst in synchrony, releasing waves of gametes into the water like pale dust in a spotlight. The ocean turns cloudy. For a moment, it looks like snow is falling sideways. This is the coral's version of a lunar party. A mass spawning event triggered with absurd precision by the full moon. Everyone's invited. No RSVP required. Just show up and float. Authoritative fact. Modern coral species like those on Australia's Great Barrier Reef often spawn en masse once a year, always after a full moon and often within a 1-hour window. These events can involve hundreds of coral species releasing sperm and eggs, at once turning the sea into a blurry living soup. Tonight you swim into it. You don't mean to. The current pulls you in. It's not unpleasant. Warm, soft, familiar in a way that feels ancestral. Every breath you take is full of future coral. You probably shouldn't think too hard about that. Fish swarm around you. Some are here to spawn. Some are here to eat the ones who spawn. Some are here because they don't know what else to do when the sky is this full of light and the water is this full of chaos. And then something strange happens. The bloom doesn't stop. Usually the coral releases for a few minutes, maybe an hour. But this time it keeps going. The current doesn't carry the gametes away fast enough. They linger, thicken, congeal, like a soup that's been simmering too long. You can't see clearly. The water feels slow. Fish bump into each other, signals get crossed. You see 2 of your cousins, one preparing to spawn, one preparing to flee, collide mid-turn. Both drop their gametes by accident. One gets eaten a second later. The other swims away in a loop, confused and empty. Something's off. Historians still debate whether ancient coral blooms ever backfired if too much synchronization could result in ecological overload. Some modern scientists warn that unusually long or thick spawning events can lead to hypoxic zones where the oxygen in the water drops dangerously low due to decomposition. You feel it now. Not fear, thirst. The water's too rich, too dense. There's not enough oxygen in the thick slurry. You open your mouth, filter a gulp, and it tastes wrong. Like breathing inside a fog machine. You begin to slow. Around you, others are slowing too. Some drift belly up for a second, then flip back. One smaller fish curls downward and doesn't rise again. You need to move. You push against the current. Your muscles scream. You've never had to fight this hard in still water. You finally break into a clearer zone. The bloom fades behind you like a strange dream. You gulp fresher current and feel your body shiver back to life. But not everyone made it. You turn just once and see the cloud still hanging over the reef like a ghost. Somewhere inside, fish are still spawning, or trying to, or dying while attempting to. It's hard to tell the difference. Odd fact. In a rare lunar correlated bloom in the Caribbean, scientists noted that fish swarm the reef in such huge numbers to feed on coral spawn that entire patches of coral were scraped bare by accident, like inviting guests to your wedding and having them eat the cake and the floor. You settle into a safer crevice. Watch. Wait. The moon keeps shining. It doesn't care that the coral bloom overdid it. It doesn't care that fish got confused or that a few species might never get their timing quite right again. It just is. You begin to associate the full moon not with spawning, not even with predators, but with uncertainty. The bloom is beautiful, but beauty can be deadly. You notice something else in the days that follow. The survivors. Those who missed the bloom entirely, who arrived late or waited near the edges, spawn in smaller groups in shaded crevices on quieter currents. And strangely, they do just fine. Their spawn finds mates. Their offspring hatch. Their numbers remain steady, maybe even more than steady. There's a lesson there, though no one writes it down. Not everything timed to the moon works forever. You begin to time your own releases to the moment after the bloom ends. The reef is quiet then. The water is clearer, and the predators are all passed out too full of coral milkshake to care. You slip your spawn into the sea like a whisper, and it works. The moon has given you many things: light, direction, predators, songs, timing. But now it gives you a reminder. Even the most ancient patterns can break. And sometimes the ones who wait inherit the reef. You've seen the moon from every angle now rising, falling full hidden wrong. You've followed it, fought it, drifted in its rhythm, and crawled away from its glare. But there's someone else out here in this same reef who treats the moon like a door that only opens when it starts to close. You don't know its name. It doesn't have one. But if you were the kind of creature who gave nicknames, you might call it the waiter. Not the kind that brings menus, the kind that waits every cycle until the moon has just begun to wane. When the light retreats, when the tides pull back, when the dancers are tired and the spawn fog has cleared, then it strikes. You spot it for the first time during a thin tide. The reef is quiet. Everything feels post-moon, like the morning after a festival where someone lit too many fires and forgot to put out the last one. And there it is, that's low, long, perfectly still, tucked under a shadowed ridge where the water's dark even when the moon is high. You wouldn't have seen it, except you did, because it moved. Not toward you, just slightly, like a blink made of muscle. Authoritative fact. Some marine predators, including species of eels and nocturnal groupers, show heightened activity during the waning moon. They may hunt by moonset, avoiding detection while still using just enough light for their advantage. It's a delicate balance between vision and stealth. This predator isn't flashy. It doesn't glow. It doesn't shimmer. It doesn't play the game of lunar timing the way everyone else does. It simply waits for everyone else to finish, when prey are relaxed, when coral clouds have faded, when shadows stretch strange and long and light turns unsure. That's when it moves. You see, it takes its first victim, a silverbacked fish swimming lazy laps after the bloom. Not careless, just relieved. The waiter doesn't charge. It drifts, slides up beside the silverback like it's part of the scenery, and then it opens its mouth. Sideways. Gone. No splash, no chase, just silence. You duck behind a fan coral and don't breathe. Not that you ever really breathe the way humans do. You pause, tense, drift. You begin to realize this creature has adapted not to the presence of the moon, but to its absence. It thrives in the lull. The sigh between lunar acts. Historians still debate whether this kind of precise lunar hunting specialization could evolve in such early ecosystems, but fossil tooth beds suggest that some predators fed exclusively in low-light conditions, often in lunar troughs. Their victims, meanwhile, show bite patterns that match no known full-moon predators. Odd fact. In 2013, scientists discovered a tiny species of marine worm that only emerges to mate after the moon begins waning, never during full or new phases. Its lifespan is shorter than a lunar cycle, but it's timed to precision. Late bloomers exist, and they're punctual. You stay hidden. The waiter drifts past you. You catch its eye, or at least the absence where its eye should be. It's not blind. It just doesn't need eyes. It feels you. But you're still smart. Slightly behind the curve in just the right way. It glides on. Later, you investigate. You find evidence. Scales in a tight spiral, half-digested coral polyps, a tooth not your kind wedged in the shell of a fossilized mollusk. This creature has been here a while, always appearing after the lights dim, never feeding during the bloom, never risking a full moon. You wonder how many species follow the moon backward. You change your route. Next cycle, you delay your ascent. Let the tide rise. Let the bloom fog over. Let the ritual unfold. Then wait. Not because you're scared, because you're learning. And when you do rise, it's with eyes wide, every fin tuned to the shadows, every current read like a sentence. You never see the weight or that cycle, but you feel it. The silence changes. The pressure shifts. Your skin hums with nerves you didn't know you had. That night you spawn fast and shallow, then retreat to the deepest corner of a crevice you found 3 moons ago. It's still there, still perfect. You don't move until the next moon. You survive. Others don't. You hear the aftermath in the reef's new quiet. One tribe is smaller. One territory now vacant. You recognize the pattern. The waiter hunted again. And once again, only the cautious survived. You don't hate it. The predator, the timing, the game. It isn't personal. It's physics with teeth. But from now on, you time your actions not to when the moon shines, but to when it fades. The moon is out. That's not surprising. But what happens next is, you don't rise, you don't spawn, you don't hunt. You listen. Because tonight, something is speaking. Not in words, of course. In pulses, in rhythm, in body. You're floating near the reef crest when it starts barely perceptible. A flicker, a twitch in the tail of the fish next to you, then another, then yours. And then the water itself begins to move in synchrony. You've never seen this before. A line of fish perfectly spaced begins swaying in identical arcs like kelp caught in the same breath. You're not sure who started it, or if anyone did, but now you're part of it. It feels less like swimming, more like singing. Authoritative fact: schooling behavior in fish is believed to have ancient origins, offering protection from predators, efficiency in movement, and social cohesion. While largely visual and hydrodynamic today, early schooling may have been triggered by synchronized movements in response to environmental cues such as lunar light. This school isn't moving toward food or away from danger. It's not a chase, a hunt, or a flight. It's a ritual. The moonlight casts a wide, even glow over the reef. Shadows vanish. You become less individual, more collective. You flick your tail again, and so does the fish beside you. There's no sound, but there's cadence. You all start to pulse. You aren't just schooling, you're performing. And then something weirder happens: bioluminescence. Not constant like the glowfish below, not sporadic, rhythmic. On, off, flash, flash, pause, flash. Like someone's counting beats in a song only fish can hear. You join in. You don't mean to. Your body just does, like sneezing at a certain smell or yawning when you're not tired. You flash and others respond. Then you wait. Then flash again. Flash, pause, flash. You are part of a pulse wave now. Dozens of fish, maybe hundreds, rising and falling in brightness as they sway to the moon's silent music. Odd fact: in 2009, researchers observed synchronized bioluminescence waves in some marine species during full moons, particularly in swarms of comb jellies and flashlight fish. The light rhythm travels across individuals, sometimes faster than the current itself, indicating a form of biological entrainment. You are caught in a conversation older than bones. Somewhere in the swirl, a predator drifts by. A sleek one, hungry, but it doesn't strike. Maybe it's confused. Maybe it can't pick out a single fish from the strobe haze. Maybe, like you, it's just watching. The light pulses begin to travel. The school rolls over the reef like a whispering tide. You fall back slightly, hovering near a crevice, not to hide, but to observe. You want to understand. This is not chaotic spawning, not panic or performance. This is something else, a new kind of language. Historians still debate whether early fish used bioluminescence socially or simply as camouflage and mating lure. The fossil record's not exactly chatty, but modern analogs suggest some species, especially those in light variable environments, may have developed synchronized signaling behavior communication via flicker. You keep watching, and then you realize it's not random. The flashes aren't just beautiful, they mean something. You begin to recognize patterns. Short, long. then pause, then short again. It's not Morse code, it's more primal than that. Less about specifics, more about states. Hungry, safe, ready, stay, go. You don't know which is which, but you feel it in your gut. You add your own flashes. Tentative at first, then more confident. One beside you mirrors your signal. A third repeats it. You change it slightly. They follow. You are heard. And that changes everything. Because for the first time, movement becomes message. Not just reaction, but broadcast. The reef watches. Coral polyps close gently. Small predators blink retreat. The waiter doesn't show tonight. Maybe it knows not to interrupt. You stay with the school until dawn. The pulse slows with the fading moonlight. One by one, the flashes stop. You drift apart like ash after a fire. No goodbyes. The water is quiet again. But you are different now. You swim away alone, but you don't feel alone. Not like before. You wonder if this is what thought feels like, not just instinct, but the beginning of community. A moment when one fish changed and others noticed. The moon taught you movement. But this is music. The moon turns red. Not pink, not rose gold, not any of the soft Instagram colors you might want to name it later in life. No, this is something ancient, raw, and wrong. Blood moon. Of course you don't call it that. You don't call it anything. But your nerves coil tighter than they ever have. Even the coral retracts not slowly, but suddenly. A reef-wide flinch. The tide is too still. The light is too dim. And the color, this red hue bleeding through the water, is not like anything you've ever known. It doesn't reflect. It soaks in. You freeze. Not in fear, in confusion. And in that stillness, so does the world. For the first time since you can remember, the reef falls into a kind of hush. Not quiet, not safe, just paused. Authoritative fact. Lunar eclipses, particularly total ones, can dramatically shift the behavior of lunar-sensitive marine organisms. Many stop spawning. Some abandon migration patterns. Even modern-day coral and fish have been documented halting normal activity during eclipses, responding to the loss or mutation of expected light. The water grows cold, not physically but behaviorally, like something massive has turned away and taken the music with it. The predators don't hunt tonight. Even the waiter who thrives on uncertainty seems absent. The reef is empty of risk but not full of comfort. Something about the red moon feels watched. Not by eyes, by memory. You drift through silt. You're not alone. Others hover in awkward postures, tails, half-coiled mouths slightly agape. Everyone's still processing. You pass a ribbon fish circling the same loop 3 times, forgetting why it started. The moon doesn't blink, it just hangs there, bleeding. And then another kind of cold arrives. The temperature does drop this time. A front carried on deeper currents, pushing up from the abyss. Not a usual upwelling. This one tastes old, like glacier breath. It spreads fast. Within hours, small plankton vanish. The coral retracts deeper than you knew it could. The soft-bodied species, those who relied on constant warmth, begin to float oddly, lightless, lifeless. You try to swim faster, but your body feels slow, like it's being remembered by something that wants you still. And then the spawning stops. Not delays, not hesitates, just ends. Species that always rose on this moon stay buried. The bloom doesn't come. The water remains clear, predictably barren. You hide beneath a ridge. Days pass, lightless, wordless, silent. Nothing comes. Nothing dies, but nothing lives either. Odd fact. Around 717 million years ago, during the Cryogenian period, the Earth experienced dramatic global cooling. Snowball Earth events. Though this script occurs in a warmer, earlier ocean, scientists have modeled sudden upwellings during similar periods that could create temporary, localized freezes enough to pause reproductive events and silence shallow ecosystems. You find one of the bioluminescent cousins curled into a spiral on the seabed, not dead, just withdrawn. It doesn't flash, doesn't respond, like it's waiting for the red light to leave. Historians still debate whether folklore began in fish. That sounds absurd, but consider this. If behavior becomes memory, and memory survives as instinct, and instinct causes avoidance, then what is that but a kind of inherited myth? A myth that says when the moon turns red, do nothing. It passes, not all at once. The red moon fades over days. The temperature rises a fraction at a time. A few brave coral tentacles reappear. One soft jellyfish flutters upward like a cautious breath. You don't move until the reef sings again. It's not real singing. Just the normal hum, fish moving, tails swishing, microbubbles rising. The sound of a biome returning to itself. You flick your fins, stretch, rise cautiously. You survive the silence, but something inside you keeps it. You don't respond to the next moon. Not completely. You hold back a day, then another. You notice others doing the same. Even the full moon loyalists hesitate. The red moon left behind a shadow not over the reef but inside you. You don't trust the sky as much anymore. You begin to spawn irregularly, quietly, away from the ledges. The memory of the red aglow lives in your timing now. It's not fear, it's caution fossilized into rhythm. And you're not the only one. Even generations later when the water is warm again, and the reefs bloom with absurd confidence, some fish still pause when the full moon rises just a little too dark. They don't know why. They just don't. You swim past a cluster of fry your own maybe huddled near the edge of a rock. They're too small to know about the red moon, but they shiver when it's full. Even mythless fish leave echoes. You've been doing this a while? Not you exactly. Your body has changed more times than you can count, which is impressive because you've never counted anything. But still, you're part of a lineage now. A tradition of nervous swimmers, cautious spawners, moonlight skeptics, and rhythm dancers. And here's the strangest part, the moon still matters. Not just to you, to the fish around you, the reef, even those bottom dwellers who once swore they'd abandoned it. You start noticing patterns in the chaos relics of timing that no one should still remember. It starts with a juvenile, barely more than a twitchy noodle with eyes darting up at exactly the moment the moon hits a certain angle. It shouldn't know that. It shouldn't know that. But it does, and it's not alone. You watch as schools of unrelated fish separated by diet, body shape, and bad neighborhood history begin to move on similar lunar beats. There's a reef full of amnesia, and yet the rhythm is still playing. Authoritative fact. Even modern fish species with no known lunar dependencies show subtle behavioral shifts during moon phases. Feeding rates. School formation and vertical migration sometimes change even in lab conditions. Some scientists believe the rhythm is encoded deeper than behavior, possibly in genes. You begin to test it. You avoid a lunar cue. You skip a cycle. Wait for the dark. And yet, you still feel the urge twitch in your spine. A subtle compulsion to rise, to flash, to move. It's not instinct, it's inheritance. You carry the moon in your muscles, and you're not the only one. You follow a group of flat-bodied algae scooping fish across a narrow pass. They don't spawn anymore. They reproduce by budding, no moon needed. But every 29 days, like clockwork, they swim in circles just before sunset. They don't know why. You follow a bottom crawler, blind, soft-bodied, completely removed from the light. It's never seen the moon. But its body temperature rises exactly on the full moon. Not enough to matter, just enough to notice. Even in darkness, the moon whispers. Odd fact. Greenland sharks, some of the longest living vertebrates on Earth, can live for centuries in the deep ocean with little to no light exposure. Yet studies suggest their vertical movements still correlate with lunar cycles. It's as if they're following a calendar they've never read. You catch your reflection in a layer of water still slick with moonlight. You don't look like the fish from before. Not the ones who danced in coral storms, not the ones who learned the hard way to hide. But something of them remains in you. A twitch, a pulse, a tendency to arch your back when the light goes silver. Historians still debate how much of early fish behavior was passed through genes versus learned in ephemeral, short-lived ways. But the patterns persist, and that persistence feels like memory. One night, you decide to swim against it, not defiantly, just to see if you can. The full moon rises, others shift, you dive, and then you feel it. In your body, a rhythm begins anyway. Your tail flicks into the old cadence. Your muscles tighten. Your jaw opens slightly, preparing for a release you've already decided against. You resist, and it works, for a while. But then the current shifts. A familiar tug. You recognize the swell, not from this cycle, from all cycles. It's like your body is reading an invisible map printed in moonlight. You realize you're not resisting behavior. You're resisting architecture. You return to the reef, not to spawn, just to float among others who understand what it means to rise when they didn't plan to. You pass a juvenile who glows once unintentionally and then darts away in embarrassment. You get it. Sometimes the moon still pulls a memory from you like a reflex. You aren't alone. The reef is full of fish with broken calendars, with mixed feelings, with ancient rhythms baked into their movement like fossils in motion. Some still follow the moon out of loyalty, some out of timing, some by accident, but most because they can't help it. You wonder just once what humans would make of this. That long after the first fish abandoned the surface, long after teeth and bones and breeding rituals changed, the moon still lingers. Not because it commands, because it reminds. The moon doesn't need worshippers, but it keeps them anyway. You rise slower now, not because you're old, but because you've learned how to wait. There's nothing urgent about this cycle. No predator breathing down your gills, no mistimed bloom, no red eclipse turning the water into quiet panic. It's just a soft moon tonight, waxing, a gentle crescent laying low over the reef like a smile too tired to commit. And yet you move. You move not because you're told to, not because a pattern demands it, but because this is what you've always done. Your body aligns without asking your opinion. You pass a younger fish. It zips ahead, unsure, jittery. It hasn't learned yet that the moon will come back again. It always does, but that doesn't mean it always should. You pause near a patch of soft coral swaying sleepy. You've seen this reef collapse and rebuild more times than you can count. The tides take pieces away and give them back like a friend with strange boundaries. And still the moon hovers. It's thinner now than it used to be. Or maybe that's just you. Your eyes are less trusting. Your rhythms are deeper. You don't rise on the first shimmer. You wait until the water feels right. Below, deep swimming cousins blink their lights in short bursts. They're still writing music with their tails, still composing symphonies no predator can follow. One glows in spirals. You like that? It reminds you of the fossils, the mirrored ones. The fish that made opposite choices and still ended up preserved side by side. Up near the surface, a different school breaks the calm. They rush upward as the moon reaches peak heights, spawning in synchronized streams. You feel the urge too, but let it pass. They're playing a different rhythm now. Yours is subtler, slower, meant for smaller, darker corners of the world. Authoritative fact. Moonlight influences everything from crab migrations to coral reef sleep cycles. Even fish that haven't relied on the moon for millennia still react to it in their physiology, timing gene expression, hormone release, or metabolic shifts according to lunar presence. The imprint runs deeper than behavior. It's chemical, cellular, fossilized. You release your spawn late. A trickle, not a tide. But it's enough. And that's what this is, now a ritual not of obedience, but of memory. You're not following a command. You're echoing a song that's still humming in your blood. You wonder how long that hum will last. One more generation. 1,000. Will there come a time when no fish remember to rise, when the moon sings, when the water forgets to shimmer, when the tides move alone? Odd fact. Even human bodies still respond to the lunar cycle. Sleep changes. Birth rates shift. Some researchers believe it's a leftover from when we too timed our lives to a distant rock with a stubborn pull. We don't need it, but it's still there. So you drift lower, slow and satisfied. The reef glows faintly behind you. Others rise to greet the moon. Others hide. But you rest. Not in ignorance, not in defiance, but in rhythm. Because the moon doesn't ask anything anymore. It simply waits and watches and remembers. Like you.